So this is part 3 on choosing a training tool. Remember that this was one big video that I had done for our Academy members a few months back when they had questions like, why do I choose the training tools that I choose and why do I make the decisions that I make? So I made this video for them explaining things like why I do choose gentle leaders and why I follow the humane hierarchy. Now this is part 3, so if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, you're going to want to go back and watch those first. Remember, you can find all the links to anything referenced in this video in the description below. And next week's video, I'll actually show you how to start introducing your dog to a gentle leader if it's a tool you think might be helpful. So that is one of the reasons that we choose gentle leaders, because gentle leaders can be conditioned so that they stop being aversive. They are definitely aversive to most dogs if you just put them on and go for a walk, as many of you can probably attest to. Gentle leaders are absolutely aversive if not used correctly. But with proper conditioning, I can make a gentle leader stop being aversive, or if I did it right and took my time and got a little lucky in the first place, I can make them never aversive. So I can take the aversiveness out of a gentle leader, which I can't do with other training tools. But the primary reason that we use a gentle leader as our chosen tool of choice is because, not so much because it solves the pulling problem, because like I've said, I have seen dogs pull into all the training tools, but because there is no other tool available that allows you to control what your dog looks at and where his nose goes. And what that means is that when I use a gentle leader or a head halter of any kind, I can manage the distractions and I can control my dog's access to them. So now I can control my dog's access to things like sniffing, to things like looking at people who are staring at him. So if my dog is getting eye contact from the friendly stranger, hi puppy, oh, I know I'm not supposed to pet him, so I'll just, that. I can slowly reel my dog's face up so that he's not getting access to that eye contact, which some dogs find reinforcing. And those are things that I cannot do with any other training tool. So the primary reason that we use a gentle leader is because it allows us to manage the environment and control our dog's access to reinforcement, which in turn allows me to teach my dog to heel. Because then when I go around distractions, I can limit the self-reinforcing and I can focus on one thing at a time, which is the position of heeling. And then I can move into slowly as we work on fading the gentle leader out. Then I can work on, also don't sniff and don't look at everybody and all of that stuff. But what the gentle leader allows me to do is work on one thing at a time, which no other tool allows me to do. So usually that's where I would end the discussion, because I try to teach like I train, which is, to focus on the things that I like and just, less ignore or more ignore the things that I don't. And I do that with people because I never want anybody to feel isolated or judged by me. And I never want anybody to feel as though they can't work with me because they use a tool that I wouldn't use. So what I don't want you to do is feel judged or isolated by anything that I'm about to say. But we did have people ask specifically about my feelings on prong collars. So I wanted to address that in this video. But again, please do not take anything personally, and please do not feel as though my group is unsafe or we're not for you just because you use a tool that I don't necessarily agree with. So when we start to talk about prong collars, we have 2 or 3 main things that come up a lot. So the first one is that what about the dogs who hate the gentle leader but don't seem to mind the prong collar? You put the gentle leader on your dog for the first time and he hates it and he's scratching at it, and you put the prong collar on and he doesn't seem to mind. And then you combine that with perhaps you tested the prong collar on yourself, or you know somebody who did, or even just your dog doesn't act as though it's painful. And so you're under the impression that the prong collar doesn't hurt that bad, it doesn't hurt at all, and all these things. But the simple fact is that prong collars work because they hurt. If it didn't hurt, it would not work, because they rely on positive punishment. So they rely on adding an aversive, something your dog doesn't like, in order to decrease a behavior. So in this case, it's adding pain to the neck to make pulling stop. And that is how they work. So when your dog puts just a little bit of pressure into the prong collar, perhaps it doesn't hurt that bad. It's just minor discomfort and it's not a big deal. If your dog lunges into the prong collar, he will put massive amounts of pressure onto his neck, and that will cause massive amounts of pain. Now, of course, lunging into a gentle leader can also cause issues, including injury. And that's something I do talk about in the gentle leader videos. And this is why when you choose to use a tool of any kind, you need to think about the fact that they all come with drawbacks. But one of the things with prong collars is that they do hurt, because if they didn't hurt, they would not work. And if your dog lunges into a prong collar, he is going to get quite a bit of pain to his neck. Now, the problem with positive punishment is that our dogs don't always make the associations we want them to make, and that can lead to fear and aggression. So, for example, my shepherd zapped herself on our horse fencing. So we have horses, we've got hot tape, and she was following me on the lawnmower, and she zapped herself on the horse fence, and she associated it with the lawnmower. So to this day, 2 years later, she gives the lawnmower this like 15-foot radius she will not come within, but the hot tape she'll jump through, because she did not in any way associate that shock with the hot tape, which is what delivered the shock. She associated it with the lawnmower. So sometimes our dogs do, in fact, associate the positive punishment with their behavior. Sometimes they associate it with things that are around them. And this is how fear and aggression can happen. So we see all the time dogs who are displaying leash aggression. So they're aggressive on leash, but not off leash, primarily because when they were younger, they were friendly and they went to greet another dog and they received a correction. And they went to greet another dog and they received a correction. Maybe they lunged towards another dog, they received a correction. And over time, what the dog learned was that other dogs are dangerous. When I'm on a leash and other dogs come near me, I get in trouble and I feel pain. So the best thing to do is to keep the dogs away. So they'll learn to be aggressive, they can learn to be fearful. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, and I completely understand that. But it does happen enough of the time that it is a well-documented risk associated with positive punishment. So like I said before, gentle leaders can be conditioned so that they are no longer aversive. Prong collars cannot, because if it stops being aversive, it won't work anymore. So then the second thing that comes up is how prong collars can be faster. They teach a dog to heel faster, or they, they stop a behavior faster than using a gentle leader or using positive reinforcement only. And that is a little bit of, it's not untrue, but it's not totally true either. So what I feel, what I've noticed, and what my colleagues agree with, is that positive punishment may seem faster in the moment, as in if you use a prong collar and I choose a gentle leader, then a week from now your dog will be healing better than my dog because I'll still be desensitizing the gentle leader. But what we see then is 6 months from now, my dog is doing at least as well as your dog, if not better. And that is really important for service dog trainers to keep in mind, because this is a long game. This is not about getting results 2 weeks from now. This is about having a dog 12 months from now that is a solid working partner who is capable of doing his job and healing without any type of training tool, and can go into any environment and be confident and calm and well behaved. And that is not something you can do in 2 weeks, regardless of the training tool that you choose. So while something like a prong collar may be faster, as in your dog will be healing better next week than my dog will be healing, once we hit the 6-month mark or the 12-month mark, at minimum it has evened out, and my dog is doing at least as well as your dog. In a lot of cases, we see the dog who was using the positive reinforcement only and or the gentle leader ahead of the dog that was on the prong collar. And like I said, because this is a long game, that matters. So if I can follow the humane hierarchy and I can use a training tool that I can teach my dog to not find aversive, that I can condition so that my dog doesn't mind wearing it, and I can get just as good of results 6 months from now as I could have with a prong collar, then that's what I'm going to do, because I am always going to take the least aversive route. And I am always going to take the route with the least amount of risks and the one that will preserve my relationship the best, and the one that will be the least aversive to my dog, because I want him to enjoy his job. And a lot of dogs wearing prong collars enjoy their job. So don't misconstrue anything that I'm saying here. And that's why I don't have this conversation a lot. But people asked, and so I'm going to be honest with you, I always choose the least aversive route possible, especially when that comes to my training tools. And I don't use training tools to teach a dog to heel. I use a training tool to manage self-reinforcing behavior. And that's what I find a gentle leader will manage it. A gentle leader will manage self-reinforcing behavior, such as pulling towards a distraction or sniffing the ground. A prong collar will positively punish those behaviors. And that positive punishment has pitfalls that come with it. And so the gentle leader falls, depending on how you use it in the humane hierarchy, somewhere as in it could be considered antecedent arrangement, and then depending on how you use it, there is certainly a negative punishment component, maybe even a negative reinforcement component, but it's not positive punishment the same way that a correction collar is. So in summary, the long story short is that we choose a gentle leader to manage the environment and to manage self-reinforcing behavior, not necessarily to teach a dog to heel. And we will always choose the least aversive method possible. And a gentle leader or a head halter can be conditioned so that it is not aversive any longer, whereas a prong collar cannot, because as soon as it stops being aversive, it stops working. So that is, that's kind of the answer to your questions is as to why we choose a gentle leader, why we want to make sure that our dogs are always faded off of the tools, because we need service dogs to heel and maintain their good behavior regardless of the tool that they are wearing, even if they don't have a tool at all. And so we try not to be tool-based trainers, but when we do need a tool, we turn to the gentle leader just because it manages self-reinforcing behavior unlike any other tool that is available to us. And it is the one that I can condition so that it is no longer aversive.